They thought it would be easy. Chain her to the rails, light a flare, and let the train finish what bullets couldn't. No one, they figured, could outrun steel. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. The first gray light of dawn crept over the jungled hills of southern Honduras when Lieutenant Commander Reyna Keller felt the cold muzzle press into her ribs. She'd been walking alone down a gravel road near El Parage, a ghost town of sawmills and rusted trucks, carrying nothing but a battered rucksack and a sat phone tucked into her vest pocket. Her orders were simple: hand off intel to a UN contact at 0700, catch a transport out by 8. Simple, if no one knew her route. But someone did. The first hit came from behind, a boot slamming into the back of her knee. She dropped into the dirt just as the second blow cracked across her jaw. The world flickered: gravel, boots, shouting voices in rough Spanish. Plastic zip ties burned her wrists as they wrenched her arms behind her. The men moved with military rhythm, but not discipline. Cartel militia, half-trained, mimicking what they'd seen in war footage. One leaned in close, cigarette breath and sweat rolling off him. "Say nothing," he growled. "Move, and we shoot your spine." A hood dropped over her head. Steel under her knees. Diesel fumes. A tailgate slammed, and someone pounded the truck's side twice. The engine roared to life. They drove fast, too fast for dirt roads. Every turn pitched her sideways. Reyna counted them in her head. 2 rights. 1 left. Hard stop. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy, dead silence of a place the world had forgotten. Hands yanked her down. Her boots scraped cracked concrete as they marched her across what sounded like old freight flooring. The air smelled of rust and oil baked into the ground. The hood came off with a jerk, and blinding morning light hit her eyes. A freight yard, abandoned, but not empty. Tracks cut through the clearing like scars. Old boxcars slumped in the distance, their doors eaten away by weather and salt. Behind her stood a crumbling platform tagged with graffiti curling up the wood. 7 men surrounded her, rifles ready. 1 stood apart. Black cargo pants, rolled sleeves, slicked back hair. No tattoos, no bravado, just control. In his hand, a stopwatch. "You're early," he said in flawless English. Reyna didn't answer. He crouched, met her eyes. "They tell me you're good with timing. That true?" She stared at him, blood drying on her lip, jaw clenched. He smiled faintly and straightened. "Let's find out." "Chain her down." 2 of them grabbed her. 1 wrapped a steel chain around her ankles, pinning them to the center rail. Another forced her wrists above her head, looping cable between the spikes. The man with the stopwatch clicked it once. "Northbound freight, 8 minutes out," he said. "Let's see how fast a Navy SEAL begs." They stepped back. Reyna felt the steel against her spine, the heat radiating from the rail. For a moment, none of it made sense. Why not just shoot her? Dump her in a ditch like all the others? Then she understood. It wasn't about killing her, it was about humiliation. A message. They'd stripped her of her belt and boots, cut the sleeves off her uniform, smeared her with grease like discarded machinery. Her wrists were lashed tight above her head, ankles spread just enough to make leverage impossible. She could already feel the faint tremor of the approaching train through the steel. A handful of men watched from the shade of a corroded freight car, laughing, passing a bottle, recording her with a phone. 1 cracked a flare with a theatrical twist, red smoke hissing across the tracks. "You know," one said in Spanish, "the last guy didn't scream until he saw the light." "She'll scream sooner," another replied. "Bet she spits in his face first." They laughed like children daring death. Reyna's breathing slowed, not from fear, but focus. The rail vibrated harder now, pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath her. The man with the stopwatch crouched again. "Nothing personal, Commander," he said. "Your leverage. Gringos stop sniffing our routes, We stopped tying them to tracks. Easy deal. She stared back at him, silent. Still quiet? He asked, smirking. You seals really die with your mouths shut. He tossed the flare beside her, its light glaring red against her face. The rumble grew louder. A horn echoed faintly in the distance. Reyna tested the bindings. The cable on her wrists, tight, but not perfect. Maybe half an inch of slack. Her right shoulder protested, the old injury flaring. She flexed her hands, rotated her joints one by one, calculating distance, mass, and timing. 40 miles an hour. Over 100,000 pounds of steel. No chance to hesitate. The second horn screamed closer. The flare spat and hissed beside her. The men stepped back, filming. One made a mock scream and fell laughing onto a barrel. Reyna exhaled slowly, then ground her thumb against the gravel until the joint popped out of socket. White-hot pain shot up her arm. She didn't flinch. Twisting her mangled hand, she forced it sideways, skin tearing, blood slicking the wire, until she slid it free. They didn't notice. Their eyes were on the train. Headlights burst through the trees. The earth quaked. The air turned electric. Reyna twisted her freed arm down, forced her body sideways. Her bound ankles held her to one rail, but she rolled, ribs slamming gravel. The horn blasted one final time. Then the locomotive screamed past, steel and wind exploding inches from her face. Sparks flew like comets. The world went white with noise. And somehow, she was still breathing. She didn't move. Not yet. The hurricane wake of the passing train ripped over her, heat, grit, and the stench of oil. When silence finally fell, the men were frozen, staring. From where they stood, it looked like the train had gone straight through her. Then one shouted. No, look there. But by the time they saw her move, she was already gone, rolling into the shadows beneath the platform, bloodied, chained, alive. And that mistake was going to cost them everything. The train was gone, but its echoes still lived in the air, a ringing hum of steel and thunder that wouldn't fade. Reyna Keller lay flat against the dirt beneath the ruined platform, every muscle trembling, every breath sharp and shallow. Her ribs ached from the impact. Her left hand throbbed where her thumb hung half out of socket. Alive. She'd made it. The men above hadn't realized that yet. They were shouting in confusion, voices bouncing off metal and concrete. She's gone. No, I saw her, there. Under the track. Shoot! Shoot! Bullets slammed into the gravel around her, sparks scattering inches from her face. She rolled, dragging the heavy chain that still clung to her ankles. Pain stabbed through her leg, but she kept moving, into the dark maw of a broken maintenance tunnel below the freight platform. The tunnel smelled of rust and stagnant oil. Her palms slid against cold concrete until she found what she was looking for, a rusted hook still bolted into the wall, once used to lift brake lines. She looped the chain through it, braced her boot against the stone, and yanked with every ounce of strength left in her. The first pull rattled the bolts. The second tore skin from her palms. The third sent a shriek of metal echoing through the tunnel, and the chain snapped loose. She was free. Reyna pressed her back to the wall, listening. Boots scuffed above. Men cursing, splitting up, fanning out with flashlights and rifles. She's bleeding. She can't be far. She's not human. No one moves like that. She bit down a grim smile. They were scared. Good. Fear was something she could use. She popped her thumb back into place with a low growl that echoed through the tunnel, then tore her remaining sleeve and wrapped the worst of the bleeding. Her fingers were slick with blood, but her mind was clear, cold, tactical, alive. The freight yard stretched ahead like a graveyard of rusted giants. Old boxcars leaned against each other, graffiti curling across their sides. Puddles mirrored the dim light from flickering flood lamps. Reyna moved low, staying in the shadows, dragging the broken length of chain behind her. It whispered against the gravel like a ghost's breath. 2 guards stood smoking near an old control shed ahead. Their rifles hung loose at their sides, their voices low. "They're gonna ask questions," one muttered. "We'll say she's dead," the other replied. "We've got video." "She didn't scream." "You think she jumped?" "She's dead." Nobody could. They never finished the thought. Reyna slipped behind a stack of crates covered with a tarp. Her eyes flicked over the labels, humanitarian aid, stamped with fake relief agency logos. She lifted the tarp just enough to see inside. The crates were too heavy for food or medicine. She pried one open with a splintered piece of metal, and froze. Inside were rifles. NATO issue. Clean, oiled, serials half scratched off. So that's what this was. A weapons route. Hidden behind the face of charity. She pulled a folded manifest from the side of the crate. Her gaze locked on a handwritten note in the margin. Confirm Lima drop before 0600. Abort secondary if delayed. Peru. Not Honduras. This was bigger, an entire supply chain running across borders, and someone at the top had made sure it stayed quiet. Reyna slipped into the control shed. Inside sat a young man on a milk crate, half dozing beside a radio. He looked up too late. Reyna moved like water, silent, fast. One arm wrapped around his neck, cutting off the sound before he could make one. His knees buckled. She eased him down, gagged him with his own rag, and tied his wrists with stripped wire from the wall. "Don't talk," she whispered. He didn't. The radio crackled beside her, U.S. encryption banned. American hardware. Confiscated, intercepted, and used against her people. Her jaw tightened. She turned off the radio, slipped the manifest into her waistband, and moved back into the rain. The freight yard was alive again, men shouting orders, flashlights cutting through mist. Reyna stayed 3 steps ahead. She didn't need to outrun them. She just needed to let them make mistakes. Near the central junction, she found a leaking drum of oil tipped over near a parked salvage engine. She siphoned a tinful, poured it across the gravel path where the North Perimeter Patrol always passed. Then she waited. The first man came jogging through the dark. His boot hit the slick patch. He went down hard with a shout. By the time he tried to rise, Reyna was already on him. She didn't kill him. She didn't have to. One strike, a sharp heel of the palm to his nose, and he dropped, unconscious. She gagged him with his undershirt, tied his wrists with his belt, and left his flashlight pointed at the wall, throwing warped shadows that would make the others think she was still moving. Then she slipped away. Further south, 2 more guards paced a narrow gap between shipping containers. Motion sensors blinked above them. Reyna crouched, reached up, and cut the signal wire. The receiver went dead. When the next man ran through, he never saw the steel pipe propped at shoulder height. It caught him under the chin. He collapsed instantly. 2 down. 4 to go. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. It masked her movements, turned her steps into whispers. From above, someone shouted. "Turn on the floodlights. She's injured, she can't get far." "She's bluffing," another barked. "She's a ghost bleeding out." Ghosts didn't bleed. And seals didn't bluff. Reyna climbed a derelict crane, moving hand over hand through the downpour. At the top, she attached the rusted hook she'd taken from the tunnel to the crane's counterweight chain. She let it fall. The crash echoed like an explosion. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. The men below panicked, opening fire blindly into the dark. Their fear was her weapon now. Reyna dropped from the crane, rolled through the mud, and retrieved the pistol she'd taken earlier. 2 rounds left. She didn't fire. Not yet. She whispered to herself, voice steady through the rain. "You thought I'd scream. Then she turned toward the control tower, the one with the light still burning inside. The man with the stopwatch was waiting. And she was going to make him watch everything he built burn to the ground. Rain lashed against the metal skeleton of the yard as Rayna Keller climbed the rusted staircase leading to the control tower. Every step moaned beneath her boots. Above, a dull yellow light glowed through cracked glass, the only spark left in a place drowning in shadow. Inside, the man with the stopwatch waited. He stood over a table littered with maps, half-empty thermos, and radio gear still humming faintly. His sleeves were rolled, hair soaked flat against his head. When Rayna's silhouette filled the doorway, he froze. "You," he muttered. Rayna stepped inside and kicked the door shut behind her. Water dripped from her uniform onto the steel floor. The pistol in her hand hung low but steady. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, voice unsteady now. "I watched the train hit you." "No," she replied evenly. "You watched a flare and a shadow. You didn't watch me." He twitched toward his hip, but Rayna lifted the pistol halfway, just enough to remind him of his mistake. "Don't," she warned. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside filled the silence, wind howling against glass, metal groaning like something alive. He broke first. "You don't understand what you've stepped into." "I didn't step," she said coldly. "You dragged me here." He tried for calm, failed halfway. "This isn't what you think. Those crates, the radio, none of it's personal. It's business. When official channels break, people like me make sure the world keeps turning." "By selling weapons under medical aid labels?" she asked. "By chaining people to tracks?" His expression hardened. "You saw something you weren't supposed to. Fear travels faster than truth. That's why you had to disappear. Who's waiting for the next shipment?" He blinked, thrown off by how much she already knew. "I read your manifest," she said. "Lima drop, 0600. Who signs for it?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "You're in over your head, Commander." "Names." He said nothing. She stepped closer until the barrel of her pistol touched his collarbone. "Or I walk you outside," she whispered, "and let your own men decide whether you already talked." The fight went out of his eyes first, replaced by calculation. Loyalty, survival, he weighed them both, and survival won. "Vargas," he said finally. "Dockmaster in Callao, Peruvian Customs. He signs the shipments through as farm equipment." "And who funds it?" "I don't know names. Accounts move through Panama, Zurich, Kingston, changes every month." "How long?" 2 years, he admitted. "I came in 6 months ago." Rayna's stare didn't waver. "Then you made one mistake." He tried to sneer. "Oh? What's that?" "You forgot who you tied down." She moved before he could breathe. The pistol but cracked against his wrist. His gun clattered to the floor. He lunged, she sidestepped, seized his arm, and drove him into the table. Maps and radios scattered. He swung wildly, catching her shoulder. She ignored the pain, swept his leg, and slammed him down again. The fight drained from him in gasps. He reached for a flare gun, desperate. She kicked it away and pinned him with her knee. "Enough," she hissed. She ripped a cable from the floor and tied his wrists, tight, fast, same way he'd tied hers. The irony wasn't lost on him. Rayna snatched the map from the desk. Freight routes, coded drop points, fake consulate seals, evidence enough to bury half a dozen careers. She keyed the radio. "Command, this is Keller. High-value target in custody. Freight yard compromised. Transmitting coordinates now." A burst of static, then a calm voice replied, "Copy that, Keller. Reinforcements inbound." Rayna glanced down at the man on the floor. "Now you wait for your train." Rain hammered the tower windows as she cut the main breaker on her way out. The light above died, plunging the upper yard into darkness while floodlamps still flickered below, enough to confuse anyone hunting her. Outside, chaos reigned. Men shouted orders in 2 languages, firing wild into shadows that didn't fire back. Reyna didn't care. The next train was already on approach. She reached the switched junction, boots sliding through mud. The eastbound freight she'd read about on the manifest was minutes away, disguised as a maintenance run. She grabbed the heavy lever, pulled hard. Metal screamed but locked into place. The train would divert onto the dead sidetrack, a trap the cartel didn't know existed. Headlights flared through the rain. Horn bellowed once, long and deep. Voices behind her. There. She's there. Bullets tore through the night. Reyna dove behind a stack of crates, shards of metal biting into her arms. She waited for the pause, then rose, fired twice. One shot caught the lead gunman in the leg, the other went wide. She rolled behind an overturned forklift as return fire sparked off the steel. The horn blared again, closer now, seconds away. Reyna sprinted, pain screaming through her ribs, the broken chain still dragging from her boot. She reached the lead car just as it thundered past. One hand caught the ladder. She slipped, regripped, hauled herself up as bullets chased sparks against the rain-slick frame. Too late. She was gone. The train barreled down the sidetrack straight into the loading zone where 3 containers sat waiting, unopened, unmarked, full of stolen guns. 2 black SUVs burst into the yard from the north, tires slicing through puddles. U.S. response team, her call had gone through. Floodlights snapped on. Shouts erupted in English and Spanish. Down. Hands where I can see them. Armas al suelo. The surviving gunmen froze. A few ran, most didn't make it far. Reyna dropped from the slowing train, landed hard, and leveled her pistol at the last man running down the track. Don't, she said. He stopped. The yard was theirs now. The train that was meant to move death carried evidence instead. Hours later, the rain had thinned to mist. Floodlights turned every puddle into mirrors. The yard was swarming with soldiers in tactical gear, quiet, efficient, professional. They barely glanced at her as they loaded the crates into armored trucks. Reyna stood near the platform, drenched, bruised, chains still clinking softly against her boot. She hadn't bothered to cut it off. A voice called from behind. Lieutenant Commander Keller? She turned. A man in clean fatigues approached, seal patch on his shoulder, scar along his temple. You the one who called it in? He asked. She nodded. He whistled low. You did this alone? Reyna's tone was dry. They had numbers. I had time. He smirked. We thought you were Kia. She looked at the tracks stretching behind them, wet steel glinting with oil and blood. I was close, she said. They chained me to the rails. He blinked. You got off the rails? I moved, she answered simply. They didn't expect that. His smirk faded, replaced by quiet respect. Medivacs inbound. You're banged up. I'm fine. Evidence is in the tower. Prisoners tied inside. Understood. The low thump of rotor blades rolled across the yard. A Black Hawk appeared through the fog, kicking up mist and dust. The SEAL leader handed her a harness. After you, he said. Reyna clipped in, grabbed the cable, and rose as the winch lifted her skyward, boots muddy, uniform soaked, eyes locked on the glowing yard shrinking beneath her. The train sat silent now, nothing but cold steel and memory. And for once, steel hadn't won.